All right, here we go. We're still on subpart S for a while. This is 1910.303. And it says authority for 1910 subpart S, but that's really not what's in here. Take a look at it now. Approval, this is 303A, approval. The conductors and equipment required or permitted by this subpart shall be acceptable only if approved as defined in 1910 to 399. Examination, installation, and use of equipment. Examination. Electric equipment shall be free from recognized hazards that are likely to cause death or serious physical harm to employees. Safety of equipment shall be determined using the following considerations. Suitability for installation and use in conformity with the provisions of this subpart. Note, suitability of equipment for an identified purpose may be evidenced by listing or labeling for that identified purpose. Mechanical strength and durability, including for parts designed to enclose and protect other equipment, the adequacy of the protection thus provided. Wire bending and connection space, electrical installation, heating effects under all conditions of use, and arcing effects. Classification by type, size, voltage, current capacity, and specific use, and other factors that contribute to the practical safeguarding of persons using or likely to come in contact with the equipment. Installation and use. Listed or labeled equipment shall be installed and used in accordance with any instructions, including in the listing or labeling. There you go, manufacturer's instructions again. Insulation integrity. Completed wiring installation shall be free from short circuits and from grounds other than those required or permitted by this subpart. Interrupting rating. Equipment intended to interrupt circuit at fault levels shall have an interrupting rating sufficient for the nominal circuit voltage and the current that is available at the line terminals of the equipment. Equipment intended to interrupt the current at other than fault levels shall have an interruption rating at nominal circuit voltage sufficient for the current that must be interrupted. Circuit impedance and other characteristics. The overcurrent protective devices, the total impedance, the component short circuit current ratings, and other characteristics of the circuit to be protected shall be selected and coordinated to permit the circuit protective devices used to clear a fault to do so without the occurrence of existing damage to the electrical components of the circuit. This fault shall be assumed to be either between two or more of the circuit conductors or between any circuit conductor and the grounding conductor or enclosing metal raceway. Deteriorating agents. Unless identified for use in the operating environment, no conductors or equipment shall be located in damp or wet locations where exposed to gases, fumes, vapors, liquids, or other agents that have a deteriorating effect on the conductors or equipment, or where exposed to excessive temperatures. Mechanical execution of work. Electric equipment shall be installed in a neat and workmanlike manner. If you've ever seen electrical equipment be installed by a professional, you'll know what that means. Boy, it really looks sharp. They run the conduit inside, everything else. My son-in-law does stuff as an electrician, and he's taking pictures sometimes of stuff he's finished, and it's beautiful. It's a work of art. Unused openings in boxes, raceways, auxiliary gutters, cabinets, equipment cases, or housing shall be effectively closed to afford protection substantially equivalent to the wall of the equipment. Now, anytime you see an electrical panel, they're usually gray boxes, and there's knockout plugs in them to allow stuff to come in and out, conduit and stuff like that. And sometimes, not second time, but frequently, they get knocked out and don't get covered back up again. That's a violation right here, and you will get written up for that, OSHA. So you've got a box, an electrical cabinet that's got an opening in anywhere. Look at the bottom too. That's where they're frequently happening. The inspector's going to look at the bottom if he wants to catch it something. And it's real easy. They got just a plug to put in there. It's real easy to do. It's not expensive and it's not difficult. It's just people being lazy. Instead of not finishing the job that they did, they probably took something out and didn't plug that up. So check that when you're doing your rounds. Check those things because you will get written up by OSHA, even though it might be something minor. You don't want to have it. The less you can have, especially for something that's as simple to catch. Conductors shall be racked to provide ready and safe access in underground and subsurface enclosures that persons enter for installation and maintenance. Internal parts of electrical equipment, including bus bars, wiring terminals, insulators, and other surfaces may not be damaged or contaminated by foreign materials such as paint, plaster, cleaners, abrasives, or corrosive residues. There should be no damaged parts that may adversely affect safe operation or mechanical strength of the equipment, such as parts that are broken, bent, cut, or deteriorated by corrosion, chemical action, or overheating. Electrical equipment shall be firmly secured to the surface on which it is mounted. Wooden plugs driven into, oh no, I like this one. Wooden plugs driven into holes in masonry, concrete, plaster, or similar material are not considered secure means of fastening electric equipment. Notice they said wooden plugs. Like raw plugs are not wooden. Raw plugs are designed for that surface, and they're probably okay. Raw plugs are those plastic ones. They're different color for different sizes. And those are pretty sturdy. Electric equipment that depends on the natural circulation of air and convection principles for cooling of exposed surfaces shall be installed so that room airflow over such surfaces not prevented by walls or by adjacent installed equipment. For equipment designed for floor mounting, clearances between top surfaces and adjacent surfaces shall be provided to dissipate rising warm air. So they're talking, electrical boxes like they get hot inside, and you want to get that dissipated. So if they have, some things have built-in fans into them to keep it cool. And so you want to make sure you have clearance all around it. And if they're, you want to keep the top surface clear so that it'll dissipate the air, the heat inside. Electric equipment provided with ventilating openings shall be installed so that walls or other obstructions do not prevent the free circulation of air through the equipment. In other words, don't butt these up against each other, leave some space so you can get some airflow if they have vents in them. Because of different characteristics of dissimilar metals, devices such as pressure terminal or pressure splicing connectors and soldering lugs shall be identified for the material of the conductor and shall be properly installed and used. Conductors of dissimilar metals may not be intermixed in a terminal or splicing connector where physical contact occurs between dissimilar conductors, such as copper and aluminum, copper and copper-clad aluminum, or aluminum and copper-clad aluminum, unless the device is identified for the purpose and condition of use, and materials such as solder, fluxes, inhibitors, and compounds, where employed, shall be suitable for the use and shall be of a type that will not adversely affect the conductor's installation or equipment. So basically here, the same, I get why dissimilar metals, because they're going to heat and up and expand and contract at different amounts, so that can cause failure. And other stuff, obviously, you got to use solder, fluxes, and stuff. Don't use something that's going to adversely affect it. Makes sense. But terminals, connection of conductors to terminal parts shall ensure a good connection without damaging the conductors and shall be made by means of pressure connectors, including set screw type, solder lugs, or splices to flexible leads. However, number 10 or smaller conductors may be connected by means of wire binding screws or studs and nuts having upturned lugs or equivalent. Terminals for more than one conductor and terminals used to connect aluminum shall be so identified. Splices, conductors shall be spliced or joined with splicing devices identified for the use or by brazing, welding, or soldering with a fusible metal or alloy. Soldered splices will first be spliced or joined to be mechanically and electrically secure without solder and then soldered. All splices and joints and the free ends of conductors shall be covered with an insulation equivalent to that of the conductors or with an insulating device identified for the purpose. Wire connectors or splicing means installed on conductors for direct burial shall be listed for such use. They put something in the ground, it better be made for that. Parts of electric equipment that in ordinary operation produce arcs, sparks, flames, or molten metal shall be enclosed or separated and isolated from all combustible material. Wow, that makes sense. Marking, identification of manufacturer and ratings. Electric equipment may not be used unless the following markings have been placed on the equipment: the manufacturer's name, trademark, or other descriptive marking by which the organization responsible for the product may be identified, and other marking giving voltage, current, wattage, or other ratings as necessary. The marking shall be sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. Disconnecting means and circuits, motors and appliances. Each disconnecting means required by this subpart for motors and appliances shall be legibly marked to indicate its purpose, unless located and arranged so the purpose is evident. Service feeders and branch circuits. Each service feeder and branch circuit at its disconnecting means or overcurrent device shall be legibly marked to indicate its purpose, unless located and arranged so that the purpose is evident. Durability of markings, same as before, capable of standing the environment, capable of accepting a lock. Disconnecting means required by this subpart shall be capable of being locked in the open position. I wonder what that's for. Maybe lockout. Marking for series combination ratings. Where circuit breakers or fuses are applied in compliance with the series combination ratings marked on the equipment by the manufacturer, the equipment enclosures shall be legibly marked in the field to indicate that the equipment has been applied with a series combination rating. The marking required by paragraphs that above this section shall be readily visible and shall state, caution, series combination system rated, blank amperes, identified replacement component required. 600 volts nominal or less. This paragraph, 303G, applies to electric equipment operating at 600 volts nominal or less to ground. Space about electrical equipment. Sufficient access and working space shall be provided and maintained about all electric equipment to permit ready and safe operation and maintenance of such equipment. Working space for equipment likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized shall comply with the following dimensions, except as required or permitted elsewhere in this subpart. There we go. With more stuff like that. The depth of the working space in the direction of access to live parts may not be less than indicated in table S1. Distances shall be measured from the live parts if they are exposed or from the enclosure front or opening if they are enclosed. The width of the working space in front of the electric equipment shall be the width of the equipment or 30 inches, whichever is greater. In all cases, the working space shall permit at least the 90-degree opening of equipment doors or hinge panels, and the workspace shall be clear and extend from the grade, floor, or platform to the height required by paragraph G1 VI, section, which we haven't got there yet.
Unknown caller.
Sorry about that. However, the other equipment associated with the electrical installation and located above or below the electric equipment may extend not more than 6 inches beyond the front of the electric equipment. Turn my phone on silent mode. Okay. Working space required by the standard may not be used for storage. When normally enclosed, live parts are exposed for inspection or servicing. The working space, if in a passageway or general open space, shall be suitably guarded. So that we're normally enclosed. So if you have to open up the space, then that space has to be guarded, because if it's just where people walk by, they shouldn't be walking by while somebody's doing some work on it. At least one entrance of sufficient area shall be provided to give access to the working space about electric equipment. For equipment rated 1200 amperes or more and over 6 feet wide, containing overcurrent devices, switching devices, or control devices, there shall be one entrance not less than 24 inches wide and 6.5 feet high at each end of the working space, except that where the location permits a continuous unobstructed way of exit travel, one means of exit is permitted, or where the working space required by the paragraph G of the section G1I, the section is doubled, only one entrance to the working space is required. However, the entrance shall be located so that the edge of the entrance nearest the equipment is the minimum clear distance given in table S1 away from such equipment. Illumination shall be provided for all working spaces about service equipment, switchboards, panel boards, and motor control centers installed indoors. Additional lighting fixtures are not required where the working space is illuminated by adjacent light source. In electric equipment rooms, the illumination may not be controlled by automatic means only. Interesting. The minimum headroom of working spaces about service equipment, switchboards, panel boards, or motor control centers shall be as follows. Here you go again. For instance, built for before 2007, 6.25 feet. After that, 6.5 feet. Except that where the electrical equipment exceeds 6.5 feet in height, the minimum headroom may not be less than the height of the equipment. Minimum depth of clear working space at electric equipment, 600 volts or less. So nominal voltage to ground, 0 to 150. Condition A, condition B, we'll talk about this in a minute. So you have 3 feet. For condition A, both 3 feet, 3.5 for condition B, and 3 and 4 feet for condition C. So they're not huge differences, but see what these conditions are. Minimum clear distance may be 2.5 feet for installations built before April 16, 1981. Conditions A, B, and C are as follows. Condition A, exposed live parts on one side and no live or grounded parts on the other side of the working space, or exposed live parts on both sides effectively guarded by suitable wood or other insulating material. Insulated wire or insulated bus bars operating at not over 300 volts are not considered live parts. It says insulated, okay. Condition B, exposed live parts on one side and grounded parts on the other. Condition C, exposed live parts on both sides of the workspace, not guarded as providing condition A, with the operator between. 3, working space is not required in back of assemblies such as dead front switchboards or motor control centers where there are no renewable or adjustable parts such as fuses or switches on the back, and where all connections are accessible from locations other than the back. Where rear access is required to work on de-energized parts on the back of enclosed equipment, a minimum working space of 30 inches horizontally shall be provided. Switchboards, panel boards, and distribution boards installed for the control of light and power circuits and motor control centers shall be located in dedicated spaces and protected from damage. They had these in a lot of the foods facilities. They had special electrical rooms and for this type of stuff, and they were secure. For indoor installation, the dedicated space shall comply with the following. This is just the height, 6 feet. And I'm not going to get into all the details on this. Okay, the space equal to the width and depth of the equipment shall be kept clear of foreign systems unless protection is provided to avoid damage from condensation, leaks, or breaks in such foreign systems. This area shall extend from the top of the electrical equipment to the structural ceiling. Sprinkler protection is permitted for the dedicated space where the piping complies with this section, and control equipment that is by its very nature or because of other requirements in this part must be adjacent to or within sight of its operating machinery is permitted in the dedicated space. Note, a dropped, suspended, or similar ceiling that does not add strength to the building structure is not considered a structural ceiling. Okay. Outdoor electric equipment shall be installed in suitable enclosures and shall be protected from accidental contact by unauthorized personnel or by vehicular traffic or by accidental spillage or leakage from piping systems. No architectural appurtenances or other equipment may be located in the working space required by paragraph G1I of this section. In other words, let's keep it simple. Guarding of live parts, except where as elsewhere required or permitted by the standard, live parts of electrical equipment operating at 50 volts or more shall be guarded against accidental contact by use of approved cabinets or other forms of approved enclosures, or by any of the following means: by location in a room, vault, or similar enclosure that is accessible only to qualified persons; by suitable permanent substantial partitions or screens so arranged so that only qualified persons will have access to the space within reach of the live parts. Any openings in such partitions or screens shall be so sized and located that persons are not likely to come into accidental contact with the live parts or to bring conducting objects into contact with them. By placement on a suitable balcony, gallery, or platform so elevated and otherwise located as to prevent access by unqualified persons, or by elevation of 8 feet or more above the floor or other working surface. In locations where electric equipment is likely to be exposed to physical damage, enclosures or guards shall be so arranged and of such strength as to prevent such damage. Entrances to rooms and other guarded locations containing exposed live parts shall be marked with conspicuous warning signs forbidding unqualified persons to enter. A lot of their facilities had, there were just a couple of panels out in the plant on the wall would have bollards up around in front of it to keep far enough away from it so they weren't of themselves a hazard, and to keep like forklifts from hitting it. You got to do that. Somebody's going to smack it. Now this is over 600 volts nominal. General, conductors and equipment used on circuits exceeding 600 volts, this is called high voltage, 600 volts, shall comply with all applicable provisions of the paragraphs A through G of this section, and with the following provisions which supplement or modify the preceding requirements. In other words, everything through A through G, which we've already talked about, they have to do that. However, paragraphs H2, 3, and 4 of this section do not apply to the equipment on the supply side of the service point. Enclosure for electrical installations. Add electrical installations in a vault, room, or closet, or in an area surrounded by a wall, screen, or fence, access to which is controlled by lock and key or other approved means, are considered to be accessible to qualified persons only. The type of enclosure used in a given case shall be designed and constructed according to the hazards associated with the installation. For installations other than equipment described in paragraph H2V of this section, a wall, screen, or fence shall be used to enclose an outdoor electrical installation to deter access by persons who are not qualified. A fence may not be less than 7 feet in height, or a combination of 6 feet or more of fence fabric and a 1 foot or more extension using 3 or more strands of barbed wire or equivalent. You got an electrical thing outside. You really want to make sure nobody gets around, messes around with it for their own safety as well as just for the security of the facility. and their operations. The following requirements apply to indoor installations that are accessible to other than qualified persons. The installation shall be made with metal enclosed equipment or shall be enclosed in a vault or in an area to which access is controlled by a lock. Metal enclosed switchgear, unit substations, transformers, pull boxes, connection boxes, and other similar associated equipment shall be marked with appropriate caution signs, and openings in ventilated dry type transformers and similar openings in other equipment shall be designed so that foreign objects inserted through these openings will be deflected from energized parts. Outdoor electrical installations having exposed live parts should be accessible to qualified persons only. The following requirements apply to outdoor enclosed equipment accessible to unqualified employees. Ventilating or similar openings in equipment shall be so designed that foreign objects inserted through these openings will be deflected from energized parts. Where exposed to physical damage from vehicular traffic, suitable guards shall be provided. Non-metallic or metal enclosed equipment located outdoors and accessible to the general public shall be designed so that exposed nuts or bolts cannot be readily removed, preventing access to live parts. Makes sense too, doesn't it? Where non-metallic or metal enclosed equipment is accessible to the general public and the bottom of the enclosure is less than 8 feet above the floor or grade level, the enclosure door or hinge cover shall be kept locked, and except for underground box covers that weigh over 100 pounds, doors and covers of enclosures used solely as pull boxes, splice boxes, or junction boxes shall be locked, bolted, or screwed on. It weighs 100 pounds, so don't worry about it. Workspace about equipment. Sufficient space shall be provided and maintained about electrical equipment to permit ready and safe operation and maintenance of such equipment. Where energized parts are exposed, the minimum clear workspace may not be less than 6.5 feet high, measured vertically from the floor platform, or less than 3 feet wide, measured parallel to the equipment. The depth shall be as required in paragraph H5I of this section. In all cases, the workspace shall be adequate to permit at least 90-degree opening of doors or hinged panels. That's a good idea too. Entrance and access to workspace, at least one entrance, not less than 24 inches wide and 6.5 feet high, shall be provided to give access to the working space about electric equipment. On switchboard and control panels exceeding 6 feet in width, there shall be one entrance at each end of the boards unless the location of the switchboards and control panels permits a continuous and unobstructed exit way of travel, or unless the workspace required in paragraph H5I of this section is doubled. Where one entrance to the working space is permitted under the conditions described above of this section, the entrance shall be located so that the edge of the entrance nearest the switchboards and control panels is at least the minimum clear distance given in table S2 away from such equipment. Permanent ladders or stairways shall be provided to give safe access to the working space around electric equipment installed on platforms, balconies, mezzanine floors, or in attic or roof rooms or spaces. So permanent ladders or stairways. Where bare energized parts at any voltage or insulated energized parts above 600 volts nominal to ground are located adjacent to such entrance, they shall be suitably guarded. Working space and guarding, except as elsewhere required or permitted in this subpart, the minimum clear working space in the direction of access to live parts of electric equipment may not be less than specified in table S2. Distances shall be measured from the live parts if they are exposed, or from the enclosure front or opening if they are enclosed. From the live part if they're exposed. If I say exposed or enclosed. Here's H5. If switches, cutouts, or other equipment operating at 600 volts nominal or less are installed in a room or enclosure where there are exposed live parts or exposed wiring operating at over 600 volts nominal, the high voltage equipment shall be effectively separated from the space occupied by the low voltage equipment by a suitable partition, fence, or screen. However, switches or other equipment operating at 600 volts nominal or less and serving only equipment within the high voltage vault room or enclosure may be installed in the high voltage enclosure room or vault if accessible to qualified persons only. Now they get pretty technical. The following requirements apply to the entrances of all buildings, rooms, or enclosures containing exposed live parts or exposed conductors operating at over 600 volts. The entrances shall be kept locked unless they are under the observation of a qualified person at all times, and permanent and conspicuous warning signs shall be provided, reading substantially as follows: danger, high voltage, keep out. Illumination shall be provided for all working spaces about electrical equipment. The lighting outlets shall be arranged so that persons changing lamps or making repairs on lighting systems will not be endangered by live parts or other equipment. The points of control shall be located so that persons are prevented from contacting any live part or moving part of the equipment while turning on the lights. Good idea. Pipes or ducts that are foreign to the electrical installation and that require periodic maintenance or whose malfunction would endanger the operation of the electrical system may not be located in the vicinity of service equipment, metal enclosed power switchgear, or industrial control assemblies. Protection shall be provided where necessary to avoid damage from condensation, leaks, and breaks in such foreign systems. Note, piping and other facilities are not considered foreign if provided for fire protection of the electrical installation. Minimum depth clearance working space at electric equipment over 600 volts. So there's your nominal voltage to ground, 600, 2500, 3 feet. Condition B, 4 feet. Condition C, 5 feet. And there's your second one, 2500, 1 to 9000, 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet. And this is a minimum depth of clear. This is the notes of that table. Minimum depth of clear working space in front of electric equipment with a nominal voltage to ground above 20,000 volts may be the same as that for 25,000 volts under conditions A, B, and C for installations built before April 16, 1981. Conditions A, B, and C are as follows. A, exposed live parts on one side and no live or grounded parts on the other side of the working space, or exposed live parts on both sides effectively guarded by suitable wood or other insulating material. Insulated wire or insulated bus bars operating at not over 300 volts are not considered live parts. Condition B, exposed live parts on one side and grounded parts on the other side. Concrete, brick, and tile walls are considered as grounded surfaces. Exposed live parts on both sides of the workspace, not guarded, as providing condition A with the operator between. And then note 3, working space is not required in backup equipment. Okay. Which has nothing to, there's nothing to do with that, was kind of the same as that last one. If you have to, if there are de-energized parts or rear axis is required to work on de-energized parts, you need 30 inches in the back too. That's 3, elevation of unguarded live parts above the working space. This is the means you get them up. You're basically providing engineering control of moving them out where people away from people. Minimum elevation maybe 8.5 feet for installations built before August 2007. Minimum elevation maybe 8 feet for installations built before April 16, 1961. If the nominal voltage phase between phases is in the range of 601 to 6600 volts. And that's the end of that standard. So there's a lot of stuff in there. A lot of it you'll never lose, but there's a couple of good things in there you need to know. And so it's good. The idea, even though we're going over it, every one of it here, it's me yakking at you. You might want to just take a few minutes, and you should, and read the standard. And that's how you be safe.